Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about the Rite of Spring by Igor Stravinsky. I'd like to go through this seminal work, dissecting it, looking at the music which makes up this masterpiece, because I do believe that having some understanding of how classical music's put together can greatly aid our appreciation and enjoyment of it. The Rite of Spring, of course, needs no introduction. It's probably the most famous piece of classical music of the 20th century. It's a truly groundbreaking work. Although it's a modernist masterpiece, much of the music actually has much older roots. Now, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring was performed as one of Sergei Diaghilev's ballets russes. First performed May 1913 at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris. And famously, it caused a riot, which perhaps Stravinsky kind of wanted, I guess. But even so, the audience took exception to the dissonant music. Must have sounded so new, ugly even. And perhaps more disturbing for the audience was the movements of the dancers. This was not pretty ballerinas going round in tutus. This was dancers stamping on the stage, you know, particularly during the famous Augurs of Spring. If you want to get an idea of what it looked like, there's some excellent reconstructions of the original choreography by Nijinsky on YouTube, so check those out. It's well worth doing to see the music in the context of the original ballet. But of course the music has a life of its own and has been so influential. It really is one of those moments where there's a break and a new start has begun, and that's certainly the case with the Rite of Spring. So let's start at the very beginning. The piece is in two parts, and the first part really is about many kind of rituals associated with the coming of spring, involving groups of young girls and young boys, and including some elders as well. And we begin with an introduction, one of the most famous openings ever for a piece of music, a high bassoon idea like this. And so on. It's actually based on an ancient Lithuanian folk song. And apparently Stravinsky was reluctant to own up to these influences in this piece, but there are many snatches of folk songs in this piece of music, even though it sounds so new and strange. We then have this bird call idea on the cor anglais, another important motif in this first A section. We hear that opening, da, 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 da. Then we come into the B section. The music seems to grow. There seems to be this life in the music. We have that bird call idea again on the cor anglais, but we also have this idea on the clarinet, another important motif. And so on. It's almost as if a forest is awakening with all these bird calls, all this life at the beginning of this piece of music. They're like these tendril-like ideas up in the bass, you know, right high in the piccolos and down in the bass clarinet, that kind of thing. And eventually its texture gets more dense, with more of a cacophony of these different bird calls and snatches of folk songs. And we have this new idea on the oboe, which I call the beginning of section C in this introduction. So so on. The music builds. We have these trumpet fanfares based on that new idea which we first heard in the piccolo clarinet. And we get to a climax where most of the orchestra is playing, and there's a break, and we go back to that initial melody again on the bassoon. This time a tone down. So on. Then we come to this transition. This transition eventually takes us to the famous Augurs of Spring. It's kind of a dance of the adolescence of the tribe. Now, if you watch the ballet, the curtains are back, and we see the dancers on stage. And there seems to be this elder as well involved in a rather comedic way as well. And we have this famous chord, the sacred chord. This is perhaps one of the most famous chords in modern music. We have an E major triad, or F flat major triad as it's notated. And on the top we have a E flat major dominant chord. Bitonality, in other words. And with the accents on unpredictable beats, it makes for a thrilling mixture. And the bassoons kind of spell out those notes. Boom, 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 boom. And then to add to the savage nature of it, the violins are all, or the strings are all down bows. Real kind of earthy, violent sound. A bit like Psycho, I guess, from Hitchcock. And this driving rhythm, so 20th century, isn't it? So unmistakable. So thrilling and exciting. This comes back time and time again in this dance, the Augurs of Spring. Eventually the music quietens down and we come to a B section. The B section is marked by this other melody, which again I think is based on a Lithuanian folk melody. We hear it on the horns. It goes like this. That characterises the second section in the Augurs of Spring. And we also have this plain chant sounding melody, I think. Always reminds me of Orthodox plain chant, which goes like this. We hear it on the trumpets and the violas to begin with. It goes like this. We hear it a bit later on as well. The movement works itself up into a thrilling climax, which then goes straight into the ritual Abduction, which is a breathtaking part of the score. We hear this idea. And then listen out for the switches in meter in this music as well. You know, it switches between 6/8, 2/4, 3/4, 12/8, 4/8, often one bar at a time. Great fun to conduct along to if you have the score. Practically the whole orchestra is playing it. We hear these ideas on the horn, these whooping ideas. We have this thunderous climax, one of my favourite moments in the Rite of Spring, a bar of silence, and then we have this part rather reminiscent, I think, of the Firebird, which I call section B in this short movement. Here we hear this in the woodwinds. And eventually this helter-skelter joyride of a piece of music finishes, and we come to Spring Rounds, which is starts off far gentler. This is more dances in the ballet between the boys and the girls in these circles. And we start with this idea, again I believe based on a folk melody. Goes like this. And then we have a new section, we kind of sludgy music. It's kind of held back like this. We have these snatches from that original idea from the A section in the woodwinds. And then we have that plain chant idea which we heard in the Augurs of Spring again. And so on. We come to this fortissimo climax on that melody. You hear the heavy brass go damn like that. I love that bit. Then we come into this really quick bit. Dum 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 dum. Then we're back to that original melody from the beginning of the movement, and so on. Then we come into the ritual of the two rival tribes. Again, a really exciting movement. Listen out for the timpani and indeed the whole percussion in this movement. This gentler idea as well, which goes like this. So this movement really is an alternation between that ferocious A idea and a gentler B melody, sometimes very quickly juxtaposed. And then we get to the B section for the final time, and here is a wonderful moment of the score. We have this incredibly complicated percussion part which we suddenly hear coming through the texture. We feel like we're segueing into another movement, another dance, and this is a great example of Stravinsky's skill in dovetailing here. While this previous movement is finishing, we can sense a new movement starting. It's very skillful the way Stravinsky does this. We have a transition then, and we're into the procession of the oldest and wisest one, where the percussion comes to the fore. It really is this primitive ceremonial music, unrelenting music, which eventually takes us to the Kiss of the Earth, which of course gives its name to the whole of this first section of the Rite of Spring. Here the elder who's been processed in of the tribe kisses the earth, and we hear this mystical, very quiet mystical music. And then we're in the final part of the first part of the Rite of Spring, the dancing out of the earth, where everyone's dancing in a frenzied way around the elder. Da, 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 da. You know, so exciting, this end of this part. And after this ferocious music, we have this great moment where Stravinsky, in this contrapuntal fashion, brings this part to a close. The different parts of the orchestra coming with this triplet idea, which is passed around the orchestra, so on and so forth, and we go to this crashing chord, and then silence. Part 2, the Exalted Sacrifice, really is concerned with the choosing of the sacrificial victim for the coming of spring, to provide the crops needed, whatever, you know, sacrifice to the earth. And this sacrifice is a girl who dances herself to death. We begin with an introduction, like part 1, where there's no action on the stage. We begin with these mysterious movements in the woodwinds. There's a very mysterious opening to this part, the second part. We hear this new melody as well in this introduction. Then we have a B section, which is the brass, which goes like this. And so on. And in this haze of harmonics and music of extreme mystery and mysticism, we come to a transition which summarises those two main sections we've heard in a few bars, and we come to the mystic circle of the young girls. And if you see the original, a reconstruction of the original choreography by Nijinsky, it's very memorable. It leaves an indelible impression on your mind seeing a circle of dancers on the stage with this music. It's very strange, very beautiful. We've heard this melody before in the introduction of this section. And then we come to the B section, and on the flute we hear this melody. Again, rather folk-like. We have another contrasting section. And then we go back to the initial idea, A. And so forth. We come to a transition and we hear the 11 crotchets fortissimo, which I love, going into the next movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we're into the naming and honouring of the chosen one, which is really exciting. And it's here this girl is picked out from this circle, and we have this violent music. Dum 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 dum. Full of rhythmic irregularities. We never know where the pulse is, where the beats are. The tyranny of the bar line, beaten, as the famous saying goes. And then we go into a contrasting section. There's basically that dum 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 dum. And then we go into the evocation of the ancestors, where we have this weird tune. Here on the stage, all the girls fall to the floor except for the chosen one. And then that takes us to the ritual action of the ancestors, which I think always has this rather Middle Eastern feel to it on the cor anglais. We have this boom, 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 boom. And on the cor anglais we hear this. 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 And so forth. And then we come into this this idea, the second section, the B section. We hear these semiquavers. And then underneath we hear this idea. And then this music builds and builds until we hear that that tune. Da, 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 really loud. We come back to that opening idea on the flutes again. And then we come into the Sacrificial Dance, the end of the piece, where the lady dances herself to death. The same music actually as the glorification of the chosen one we've heard before. Dum 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 dum. And then we go into another part. Dum dum dum. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Which takes us to the end of the Rite of Spring. We do have a return to that, the glorification of the chosen one music. Dum 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 dum. And we have a new section where the dancer begins to tire, but that's quite brief. We have an alternation between these three elements to this movement. Again, you can see the exact form down below in the description. We end with that thrilling chord where the dancer, tired out, exhausted, just drops to the floor dead. And that's the Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, a true masterpiece, and one of those pieces of music which really did change everything. Please click like and subscribe if this is your kind of thing, and if you have any suggestions or any pieces you'd like me to dissect or analyse, please put them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Bye.